Divine Code, The Science of Prayer and Creative Thought. Retrieved from the chapter titled Religion out of Charles Haanel's book Mental Chemistry. Destiny is determined, for nations and for individuals, by factors and forces that are really fundamental, such as men's attitude toward one another. Ideals and motives are more potent than events in shaping history. What people think about the abiding concerns of life means more than any contemporary agitation or upheaval. A few centuries ago, it was thought that we must choose between the Bible and Galileo. 50 years ago, it was thought that we must choose between the Bible and Darwin. But as Dean Inga, of St. Paul's Cathedral, London, says, every educated man knows that the main facts of organic evolution are firmly established, and that they are quite different from the legends borrowed by the ancient Hebrews from the Babylonians. We are not required to do violence to our reason by rejecting the assured results of modern research. Traditional Christianity must be simplified and spiritualized. It is at present encumbered by bad science and caricatured by bad economics, and the more convinced we are of this, the less disposed we shall be to stake the existence of our faith on superstitions which are the religion of the irreligious and the science of the unscientific. Modern discontent and unsatisfactory conditions are the symptoms of a deep-seated and destructive disease. Remedies applied to these symptoms in the form of legislation and suppression may relieve the symptoms, but they do not cure the disease, which will manifest in other and worse symptoms. Patches applied to an old, decaying, and obsolete garment in no way improve the garment. Constructive measures must be applied to the foundations of our civilization, and that is our thought. A philosophy of life, having as its basis blind optimism, a religion that won't work 7 days a week, or a proposition that isn't practical appeals to the intelligent not at all. It is results that we want, and to all such the acid test is, will it work? The apparent impossibilities are the very things that help us to realize the possible. We must go over the unbeaten trail of thought, cross the desert of ignorance, wade through the swamp of superstition, and scale the mountains of rites and ceremonies if we ever expect to come into the promised land of revelation. Intelligence rules. Thought, intelligently directed, is a creative force which automatically causes its object to manifest on a material plane. Let him that hath an ear to hear, hear. One of the characteristic signs of a general awakening is the optimism shining through the midst of doubt and unrest. This optimism is taking the form of illumination, and as the illumination becomes general, fear, anger, doubt, selfishness, and greed pass away. We are anticipating a more general realization of the truth, which is to make men free. That there may be one man or one woman who shall first realize this truth in the new era is barely possible, but the preponderance of evidence is for a more general awakening to the light of illumination. Everything which we hold in our consciousness for any length of time becomes impressed upon our subconsciousness, and so becomes a pattern which the creative energy will wave into our life and environment. This is the secret of the power of prayer. The operation of this law has been known to a few in all ages, but nothing was more improbable than the unauthorized revelation of this information by any student of the great esoteric schools of philosophy. This was true because those in authority were afraid that an unprepared public mind might not be ready to make the proper use of the extraordinary power which the application of these principles disclosed. We know that the universe is governed by law, that for every effect there must be a cause, and that the same cause, under the same conditions, will invariably produce the same effect. Consequently, if prayer has ever been answered, it will always be answered if the proper conditions are complied with. This must necessarily be true. Otherwise, the universe would be a chaos instead of a cosmos. The answer to prayer is therefore subject to law, and this law is definite, exact, and scientific, just as are the laws governing gravitation and electricity. An understanding of this law takes the foundation of Christianity out of the realm of superstition and credulity and places it upon the firm rock of scientific understanding. The creative principle of the universe makes no exception, nor does it act through caprice or from anger, jealousy, or wrath. Neither can it be cajoled, flattered, or moved by sympathy or petition. But when we understand our unity with this universal principle, we shall appear to be favored because we shall have found the source of wisdom and power. It must be conceded by every thinking person that the answer to prayer furnishes the evidence of an all-pervasive, omnipotent intelligence which is immanent in all things and all persons. We have heretofore personalized this ever-present intelligence and called it God, but the idea of personality has become associated with form, and form is a product of matter. The ever-present intelligence or mind must be the creator of all form, the director of all energy, and the source of all wisdom. In order to secure the best thought of the world on the value of prayer, the Walker Trust recently offered a prize of $100 for the best essay on prayer. The meaning, the reality, and the power of prayer, its place and value to the individual, to the church and the state, in the everyday affairs of life, in the healing of disease, in times of distress and national danger, and in relation to national ideals and to world progress. In response to the invitation, 1,667 essays were received. They came from every quarter of the globe. They were written in 19 different languages, and the prize of $100 was awarded to the Reverend Samuel McComb of Baltimore. A comparative study of these essays is published by the Macmillan Company of New York. In giving his impressions, Mr. David Russell of the Walker Trust says, "To practically all the contributors, prayer is something real and of inestimable value, but unfortunately there is little information given as to the method by which the law is placed in operation." Mr. Russell himself agrees that the answer to prayer must be the operation of a natural law. He says, "We know that to make use of a natural law, the intelligence must be able to comprehend its conditions and to direct or control its sequences. Can we doubt that to an intelligence great enough to encompass the spirit, there would be revealed a realm of spiritual law? It seems that we are rapidly coming into an understanding of this law, and understanding is control. The value of prayer depends upon the law of spiritual activity. Spirit is the creative principle of the universe and is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. Thinking is a spiritual activity and consists of the reaction of the individual against the universal mind. I think, therefore I am. When I cease to think, I cease to exist. Thinking is the only activity which spirit possesses. Spirit is creative. Thinking, therefore, is a creative process. But as the larger part of our thinking processes are subjective rather than objective, most of our creative work is carried on subjectively. But because this work is spiritual work, it is nonetheless real. We know that all the great eternal forces of nature are invisible rather than visible, spiritual rather than material, subjective rather than objective. But exactly because thinking is a creative process, most of us are creating destructive conditions. We are thinking death rather than life. We are thinking lack rather than abundance. We are thinking disease rather than health. We are thinking inharmony rather than harmony. And our experiences and the experiences of our loved ones eventually reflect the attitude of mind which we habitually entertain. For be it known that if we can pray for those we love, we can also injure them by entertaining and harboring destructive thoughts concerning them. We are free moral agents and may freely choose what we think, but the result of our thought is governed by an immutable law. This is the modern scientific phraseology for the scriptural statement, "Be not deceived, for God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man sows, that shall he also reap." Prayer is thought in the form of a petition, and an affirmation is a statement of truth. When reinforced by faith, another powerful form of thought, they become invincible because faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. This substance is spiritual substance, which contains within itself the Creator and the created, the germ, the Elohim, that which enters in, goes forth, and becomes one with its object. But prayers and affirmations are not the only forms of creative thought. The architect, when he plans to erect a wonderful new building, seeks the quiet of his studio, calls on his imagination for new or novel features embodying additional comforts or utilities, and is seldom disappointed in the results. The engineer, who designs to span a chasm or river, visualizes the entire structure before making any attempt to embody it in form. This visualization is the mental image which precedes and predetermines the character of the structure which will eventually take form in the objective world. The chemist seeks the quiet of his laboratory and then becomes receptive to the ideas from which the world will eventually profit by some new comfort or luxury. The financier retires to his office or counting room and concentrates on some problem in organization or finance, And soon the world learns of another coordination of industry requiring millions of additional capital. Imagination, visualization, and concentration are all spiritual faculties, and they are all creative because spirit is the one creative principle of the universe. He who has found the secret of the creative power of thought has found the secret of the ages. The law stated in scientific terms is that thought will correlate with its object. But unfortunately, the large majority are allowing their thoughts to dwell upon lack, limitation, poverty, and every other form of destructive thought. As a result, this spirit, with which they are automatically connected, responds to their habitual thought. Nothing can take place, nothing can be made, nothing can be changed, nothing can be modified, improved, constructed, or destroyed, but that which is essentially creative must be the cause. We are not to suppose that the unchangeable is subject to caprice. We may imagine that the immutable can be persuaded by tears or entreaties. We may believe that we may coax it by pleadings, or that we may convince it by arguments, but nothing could be further from the truth. It must be apparent to every thinking person that the essential part of creative work is the mental effort, and that the required material will be forthcoming only as we consciously or unconsciously comply with the requirements. But the so-called world of matter, as such, does not exist except in a limited and relative way. We know that there is an infinite and omnipresent power or force which men call God, that we live and move and have our being in it, that this force is spiritual, but we are just beginning to know that it is mind and that it is active. So active, in fact, that it is continually creating new bodies for itself. A portion of the universal mind that inhabits a body is called an individual mind. Each individual mind, or ego, is an individualization of the universal mind, and we are beginning to realize that the universal mind is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. The power is within us. The laws governing the conditions under which we can consciously use this power are, therefore, simply the conditions under which the individual mind works. There is only one process of thought. Therefore, all thought-producing processes are the same in kind and differ only in degree. End of the excerpt.